Flashing red and blue lights filled my front yard. Two cops stood by their cruiser while my HOA president Karen grinned like she'd just caught a criminal. She was claiming I'd stolen my own car. What she didn't know was that the SUV sitting in my driveway wasn't just mine, it belonged to the U.S. Department of the Interior, and I was the federal official in charge of it. I had moved into that quiet suburban neighborhood thinking it would finally give me a break from years of chaos. After a decade managing wildlife reserves and mediating land disputes across the country, I wanted calm. My new home sat on a tree-lined cul-de-sac, the kind of place where people watered their lawns at 6 p.m. sharp and waved to each other while collecting the mail. I remember thinking, this might actually be peace. But peace didn't last long, not with Karen around. The very first day I pulled up in my silver hybrid SUV, she appeared like she'd been waiting for me. Late 50s blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, clipboard hugged tight to her chest. She looked like the final boss of every suburban nightmare. "You can't park that thing here," she said, pointing at my car as if it had committed a crime. I blinked. "Excuse me, it's not HOA approved," she said. "We like things uniform here. That vehicle's an eyesore." I tried to laugh it off. "It's just a car, Karen." She tilted her head, that fake sweet smile creeping in. "My son's looking for a second car. Maybe you should sell it to us if you want to fit in." I smiled back, polite but firm. "Thanks, but it's government property." The look on her face shifted instantly. The smile vanished. "Government property?" She repeated, her tone sharp now. "You mean your property? Don't play games with me. This neighborhood has rules." That was the first time I realized I wasn't dealing with a neighbor, I was dealing with a tyrant. Over the next week, Karen became my uninvited welcoming committee. Every morning she patrolled the street with her clipboard, hunting for violations like a suburban hawk. And apparently, I was her favorite target. Grass too long, mailbox color off standard, trash can visible from the curb. Half of the notes she left on my door weren't even real violations. I had spent years managing conflicts over national land policy. But this was pettiness turned into warfare. At first, I tried to ignore her. I told myself, you've dealt with senators, activists, even hostile ranchers. One suburban busybody isn't going to break you. But by the second week, I started dreading the sound of her heels clicking on the sidewalk. I couldn't step outside without feeling like I was being watched. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I came home from work, still in my government-issued field jacket, to find Karen standing next to my car with her phone out snapping pictures. "What are you doing, Karen?" I asked, already tired. "Documenting violations," she said proudly. "This vehicle hasn't moved in 3 days. That's abandonment under HOA policy. I'll need you to surrender it for inspection or we'll tow it." I almost laughed. "You're not touching this vehicle." She crossed her arms. "It's an HOA matter. It's a federal matter," I shot back. "That car is part of a protected government fleet." Her smile twisted. "You think that word federal scares me? I know people at City Hall. I'll get the police involved." I stared at her for a long second. "You do that." That night I sat at my kitchen table staring out the window at the faint glow of streetlights bouncing off my SUV. I started questioning myself. Maybe I'd been too confrontational. Maybe I should have just parked in the garage, kept my head down, avoided the whole mess. I'd dealt with bureaucratic bullies before, but something about being targeted in your own neighborhood, your supposed safe space, hits differently. Part of me wanted to just pack up and leave. I didn't move here to fight another battle. I wanted quiet, peace, normalcy. But then another part of me whispered, if people like her aren't challenged, they just keep going. They learn they can bully anyone into submission. And that after everything I'd seen in my career wasn't something I could live with. The next evening, just as I started cooking dinner, the flashing lights showed up. Red, blue, blinding through my kitchen blinds. I stepped outside to find 2 officers standing by their cruiser. Karen stood behind them, practically glowing with pride. "That's the one," she shouted. "He's lying about working for the government." I checked his mailbox. No federal ID number, no paperwork. "He's stealing that car." One of the officers cleared his throat. "Sir, we got a report about a stolen government vehicle parked here." I took a breath, steady and calm. "A stolen government vehicle," he nodded. "We just need to verify ownership, sir." "Of course," I said, and walked over to the SUV. I opened the glove box, pulled out my identification wallet, and handed it over. The lead officer's eyes widened as he read it out loud. Chief Field Director, U.S. Department of the Interior. His partner glanced at Karen, whose smug grin was starting to fade. "This vehicle," I said, gesturing to the SUV, is part of a federal fleet. It's used for environmental inspections and emergency coordination. Tampering with or attempting to seize it," I looked directly at her, "is a federal offense." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the wind seemed to stop. The officer finally turned to her. "Ma'am, did you make this report?" "Yes, but he was lying. I was just protecting our community." "Filing a false report is a crime," the officer said flatly. "And interfering with federal property is worse. You're lucky he's not pressing charges." Her face flushed red. "Charges against me. I'm the HOA president." I looked at her, voice low. "Then maybe act like one." The cops left soon after. Karen stood frozen in her driveway, still clutching her clipboard like it could shield her from humiliation. The next morning I noticed curtains twitching up and down the street. Neighbors who'd been silent started whispering. Over the next few days, people approached me quietly at the mailbox while walking dogs, telling me their own Karen stories. She fined me for leaving Christmas lights up too long. She threatened to sue me over a fence 2 inches too high. She told me to repaint my house because the beige wasn't the right shade. Turns out everyone had suffered under her so-called standards. They'd just been too afraid to speak up. By the end of the month, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I didn't plan to attend, but curiosity got the better of me. When I walked in, Karen was already there, no sunglasses, no smile, surrounded by neighbors she used to intimidate. She tried to justify everything I was maintaining order, keeping our community safe, but the board wasn't buying it. Too many people had stories, too many receipts, too many pictures of her overstepping her bounds. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed as president. She stood up, red-faced and trembling, muttering something about ungrateful neighbors, and stormed out of the room without looking at me. I thought that was the end of it. But a few weeks later, on a quiet Saturday morning, I heard a knock at my door. Karen stood there, no clipboard, no sunglasses, just a tired woman holding a cup of coffee. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I thought you were like the others. I didn't know you actually worked for something that mattered." I nodded slowly. "We all work for something that matters, Karen. You just have to decide what that is." For the first time since I'd met her, her eyes softened. She didn't say another word, just turned and walked away. After she was gone, the neighborhood changed. The energy shifted. People started mowing lawns for elderly neighbors, organizing cleanups, planting flowers by the community park. Without her policing, everything, people actually began to care again because they wanted to, not because they were threatened to. And me, I still park my silver SUV right there on the curb, government plates gleaming in the sun. Sometimes I catch a reflection of it from my window and smile. Not out of arrogance, but because it reminds me of something I nearly forgot. Real authority doesn't come from titles, rules, or fear. It comes from respect.